Buenos dias, everybody. We are here for the Pokemon 2022 Bilbao Special Event, live, of course, in Bilbao. I myself am Costadai Dimos, and I am joined by Mr. Jamie Boyd for this occasion live.
Yes, live. Finally live again.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of years now. We've had to stick to the online circuit, but we are here in person for these special events, and it's going to be a great, great time. I'm very, very happy to be back in person and casting with you for the first time live as well. It's going to be a fantastic event, and we've got a great match to start us off. We are going to be featuring our current European International Champion, Eric Rios.
Eric Rios, indeed, versus Gabriele Mocciaro for round one to kick us off, of course. And like you said, I think I initially we expecting Eric to bring the same team again and just keep on being Mr. Consistent?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see it again. We've seen how consistent he can be. Even though it was the team to beat, it apparently was not beaten because Eric was such a master in that team. We'll have to see if he's going to be switching up. He has every opportunity to do so, or if he just wants to stick to the same team. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that as well.
Well, exactly that. And at the moment, as you can tell, obviously, we don't have the team sheets in front of us. And we do actually have a vote that is available in chat that anyone that has joined us, of course, you could go ahead and participate and try to go ahead and put your support in for who you think will be able to go ahead and be triumphant, go 1-0 straight into round two.
Yeah, that's what you want to be doing. You want to start off with that win, get that momentum going, and try and keep it going throughout the tournament. So this round one is always very crucial to be trying to get that initial win.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's no pressure from Gabriele's side, at least for now, because all the pressure is on Eric, to try to go ahead and keep his performance up and going. And obviously, we're actually straight into the game, so apologies there for the quick transition. We've got Eric on one side versus Gabriele. Eric's going to be bringing the Zacian and the Gastrodon, whilst over on Gabriele's side, we're going to be seeing the Incineroar and the Thunderous Incarnate.
Yeah, it seems Eric is sticking to what he knows. He has brought the classic Verinia Sun into this matchup, going against the Zacian and Kyogre that we did see him face down in the final. A little bit of a different team coming out here for Gabriele. The Thunderous could be very influential going into this game, especially because it has been brought straight away. It's one of the Pokemon that can outspeed and just one-shot a Dynamax Charizard, depending on how it is trained.
Yep.
We'll have to see if it is going to be what that supports Thunderous, or if it's going to be the Dynamax one that you do go with the Defiance. That is very good into this matchup, but not particularly good against the opposing Gastrodon here. That might be where it's just protecting itself, not going on the offensive just yet.
Yeah, not actually a common move on Thunderous nowadays, unless, of course, it may be that prankster mode that it could be going for with the support. But Gastrodon went for the Protect. We do see Zacian go for the Sacred Sword, deal so much damage, even at neutral, onto that Incineroar, whilst actually getting a parting shot directed into its side. Out of retaliation, they're allowing this Incineroar to just go ahead and pivot itself out and potentially bring in a fresh Pokemon for Gabriele to try to take the advantage going into turn two.
Yeah, he took quite a decent chunk of damage on that Incineroar, but getting the drop once again onto Zacian. Now it's put at -1. If the Thunderous is going to be the Pokemon you want to be going for that Dynamax, it does still take a lot of damage from just a regular Behemoth Blade, but now it's been reduced in that stages of reduced stages of attack. It's going to be able to take the attacks much more comfortably, especially if you're bringing in your own Zacian at this point. Now, if you do want to be Dynamaxing the Thunderous, you can get an Airstream onto your own one, and you'll be guaranteeing that you outspeed the opposing Zacian with yours, and then you can do some massive damage. Both Pokemon don't really want to be facing down the Gastrodon too much. It did kind of waste a turn there going for the Protect. It had the opportunity to go for an Earth Power into the Incineroar. If it did, that would have been able to hit the Zacian and put it in range of a Behemoth Blade for Eric's Zacian to go for that. But now the Thunderous, it could just go for an Airstream. That would be the best amount of damage you could go into the Gastrodon. Probably need to be doubling up with the Airstream and the attack from the Zacian, whether that's going to be Behemoth Blade or Play Rough into the Gastrodon to be able to pick up that KO. But if you do that, then the opposing Zacian just gets to go on the offensive and do what it wants this turn. But you do need to be putting a stop to those potential yawns that could come out from the Gastrodon.
Well, yeah, and I think there could even be a choice from Gabriele to ignore the Zacian completely, maybe expecting a defensive switch out here, as we do actually see right now. So Eric is going to be bringing in the Groudon instead, but maybe to try to reset that Intrepid Sword and bring it back up to scratch from Zacian coming in later in the mid to end game. But Groudon is on the field right now, and we are going to be seeing Gabriele actually go for the Dynamax. And of course, since Zacian can't actually Dynamax, we know for a definite that it is going to be that Thunderous Incarnate.
Yeah, and stalling out a turn and that Dynamax was quite nice, going for the Protector. A move we don't often see on Thunderous, because usually these Dynamax Thunderous do want to be carrying the Assault Vest. You don't have the option for that. So we'll have to see if it is going to be a much more offensive item, maybe the Life Orb that could be coming out from the Thunderous.
Yeah, definitely could be, as we see Gastrodon trying to go for the double protect, but failing. Zacian goes for the Sacred Sword into Gastrodon. It had full +1 attack there, so it took advantage of that. The Max Airstream comes in and actually does pick up the KO with a double up there. So very good play from Gabriele. They're taking advantage of the momentum from Eric's defensive play there.
Yeah, very nice. The Zacian on Eric's side of the field wasn't going to be doing too much, and we do see that the Life Orb on the Thunder is going to be able to do a lot more damage than it normally would if it was that Assault Vest variety. And Gastrodon taken care of means that there's no yawns that could have come out. That could have put a stop to the Thunderous if it managed to get off that yawn, but it's just taken care of very, very quickly there. And now you do have that Airstream on the Zacian, so you are going to be outspeeding the opposing Zacian as well. So even though it's going to be coming back in for Eric's side of the field, they're going to be bringing back in the Zacian. Your Zacian has the advantage over your opponents now. At least the Groudon is in, and in a pretty reasonable position still. It most likely wants to be the Pokemon that wants to go for the Dynamax for Eric's side of the field. It can take on the Thunderous and the Zacian very well. It can knock out the Zacian in one shot. It can get a lot of damage into the Thunderous with the Rock Fall as well, but probably not enough to pick up the KO, and you'd probably need to double up with the Zacian Behemoth Blade. It's got back 2+1 at this point, but you've still got the potential of the Incineroar that could switch in to intimidate it, to allow the Thunderous to be able to take those Behemoth Blades better, but it's still going to outspeed the opposing Zacian with that speed boost, and will be able to get off massive damage.
Yeah, and I think it is obviously evident as well that at the moment I don't think Eric has brought the Incineroar in respect of a potential Defiant Thunderous Incarnate, so there's nothing that can actually try to slow down the momentum from the Zacian, so it will just be going for damage after damage and trying to take advantage of this speed advantage right now that Gabriele has on his side of the field as Eric, and I think this is a bit of a play that actually shows us that Incineroar was not brought, or maybe just wants to stay in the back, because we're going to be seeing the Dynamax coming out from the Groudon right now. Likely will be trying to target this Thunderous and try to cut its wings a bit per se, or cloud parts. But no, it may even be met with that Max Guard coming out there. Defensive play, but may have actually gotten it right with a read on what Eric's priorities are. As we're going to be seeing the Behemoth Blade go straight into the Groudon there and deals so much damage. Of course, Zacian goes for the Behemoth Blade into the Max Guard, followed up by the Max Rockfall, and that is a stellar move from Gabriele there.
That's two very good protects coming out from the opposing Thunderous here, and it's not a move we see very often because it's so often going to be the Assault Vest, so yeah, very nice Max Guard there, getting a huge amount of damage onto the opposing Groudon, and now you just get to go for Behemoth Blade into the Groudon and pick up the KO, and then you can launch an attack into the Zacian, something like a Max Lightning as well, so very, very good use of the Max Guard there. That has put Gabriele in a very, very commanding position. You get to effectively pick up the choice of KO at this point. You could double up into the Zacian for the KO, but then you would ignore the Groudon at that point, and you can see how effective that Max Guard was. Now the Groudon is in range of the Behemoth Blade, it has to switch out if it wants to preserve itself.
Exactly that, because it can't do much. Its Dynamax has been completely rendered null there, per se, as we're actually going to be seeing the Charizard switching in right now. Behemoth Blade comes out from Gabriele's Zacian, of course being the faster one of the two, goes into the Charizard slot, does two-shot it as well, so that slot is just constantly being susceptible to KOs as Max Lightning comes out, Life Orb boosted, deals a lot of damage, also guarantees a 2-hit KO there, and Eric is going to really have to try to regain momentum, but I'm not sure how he'll be able to, outside of anything, maybe by RNG.
Behemoth Blade is going into the opposing Zacian at this point, so you're going to be able to put it in range of another attack, but it's still going to be outspeeding both Pokemon here. You've got the little bit of chip as well from the solar power of the Charizard. That's going to be in range of any attack that Gabriele would want to go for. At least the Max Lightning did a lot of damage to the opposing Zacian. Maybe Wild Charge might not be enough, because Max Lightning is going to be significantly stronger than that move. It would be pretty close, but you'd be able to easily pick up the knockout on the opposing Charizard. Your Zacian outspeeds, and the opposing Zacian on Eric's side of the field is definitely in range of Behemoth Blades. Like, we we've seen there's no Incineroar to be able to reduce the damage output of that. So really, Gabriele is in the driving seat here and just gets to click attacks to be able to pick up 2 KOs. And even if Eric switches around, you can switch in the Groudon to take up the potential wild charge from the Thunderous, but then your Zacian is open to the Behemoth Blade, and then you still have to contend with the Behemoth Blades and the wild charges that can come out. So I wouldn't be surprised if we just see Gabriele just click wild charge, click Behemoth Blade for the rest of the game. There doesn't seem any need to do anything else, and even if there was, you've got 2 Pokemon waiting in the back. One of them wasn't even revealed, so very, very commanding game 1 for Gabriele.
Yeah, definitely is, and I think, like you said, there wasn't a lot of trade-off. Should I say, you're not losing much from going for the safe plays there, since you've been able to control the tempo completely with the max airstreams and the correct targeting and defensive plays, because I think a lot banked on the max guard as well, right? Because it essentially cut off Eric's resources, well, should I say, with the Behemoth Blade, no pun intended, but it was able to just guarantee the 2-hit KO onto the Groudon, and anything that does want to switch into that will still be susceptible to so much damage coming out of the strongest restricted that we've seen in the format.
Yeah, it was a very offensive Thunderous, the most offensive with the Life Orb, but the defensive plays coming out from the Thunderous was the key thing there. Going to be able to eat up the Dynamax move from the Groudon and the Behemoth Blades, just a very, very strong showing for that Thunderous, and it does need to be respected a lot more now. At least we confirmed that it is the Life Orb variety, and it can protect, which is very crucial information. A lot of Thunderous can't protect because they have Assault Vest instead, but Life Orb is going to be very good here. You do probably want to be trying to get a Yawn off with the Gastrodon, but just wasn't given that opportunity at all because it was just taken care of by the double-up. So Gastrodon could be an important member in this matchup, especially if you're facing down a Kyogre, but if it's just taken care of that quickly, then it's not going to be able to do what it wants.
Well, yeah, so do you think that Gastrodon isn't maybe the brain, at least with the way that Gabriele is going ahead and playing it, because he's completely not relying on Kyogre, at least from what we saw, because he didn't have to. He was able to just go ahead and get the correct reads at the correct time, and then just go ahead and run away with the game, essentially. So he may have even had the Kyogre in the back just in case for backup. We never got to actually see the 3rd and 4th Pokemon. So do you think we are actually going to be seeing a switch up? Then I feel like we might have to from Eric's side, at least to try to slow down this momentum and gain a bit more traction for his own strategy going into this game too.
Yeah, Gastrodon is a very important member against opposing Kyogres, but if you don't need the Kyogre to be able to defeat the opponents, then maybe Gastrodon is not the one you want to be going for. But then you still have to respect the Kyogre. If you leave the Gastrodon on the bench and Kyogre is the main Pokemon that you are focusing on, then it's going to be a bad time there. But it's still just Thunderous and Incineroar coming out for Gabriele, sticking what works here, but a little bit of a switch up here if Eric. It's going to be Zacian and Groudon instead.
Okay, I mean, Gabriele's tactic worked in Game 1, didn't it? So just being able to guarantee both an Intimidate on Eric's physically offensive Pokemon, whilst also going for that pivot play, just makes a lot of sense, and it positions himself in such a good way that Zacian does not get any sort of damage dealt onto it, and it comes up with its very strong Intrepid Sword and just goes for the damage.
Yeah, and now the Thunderous, it might even be able to survive a Behemoth Blade and a Rockfall from the Groudon. It would be pretty close with that Intimidate. And if you just go for the Fake Out into the opposing Zacian, then you'd just put a stop to that as well. You can just go for the Parting Shots into both Pokemon. We saw how effective the Parting Shot was in that first game, because it forced that Zacian to switch out, and then there wasn't any damage potential coming out for Eric's side of the field for the first couple of turns. So we'll have to see if that Thunderous is going to go on the offensive again, where it just protects and the Incineroar repositions itself, or it can just go on the offensive here. If you just go for the Fake Out into the Zacian, you're guaranteeing that at least no Behemoth Blade is coming out here, but I think that's Eric's side of the field Dynamaxing first.
It does look to be the case indeed. So we are going to be seeing the Groudon go for the Dynamax right now. Eric does not want to try to wait on this. He wants to go straight for the pressure, force Gabriele's hand, per se, at least in this beginning early game phase of Game 2, as we are going to be seeing the defensive protect coming out from the Thunderous. Not a lot to lose here, but let's see if Eric actually has recognized this, gone for the double up, which so far 1 out of 2 steps has been completed. Sacred Sword goes into the Incineroar, and yes, we do actually see the follow-up of the Max Quake. We see the Sugar Berry proc from this Incineroar, but I don't think that's going to be enough to save it from where it's currently at, as, yeah, indeed, it's not going to be enough. So very solid turn 1 play there from Eric, but let's see it as well from the aspect of Dynamax has been wasted at least for the one turn, and this Groudon, both Groudon and Zacian aren't hitting as strong as they would like going into this turn too.
Yeah, that is a nice play, ignoring the Thunderous that did go for the Protect,
Yep.
but you probably could have got away with just Precipice Blades there to be able to pick up the KO. Even with the Shoko Berry, the Sacred Sword was probably enough in that combination, so you do effectively use up a turn of Dynamax. You've got a special defense boost at least, so if you've got the Kyogre waiting in the back, the Groudon can take on the Kyogre pretty comfortably, even if the rain goes up. Assumingly, there is going to be the Assault Vest variety that we saw him take the European International Championships previously with, so it would be pretty comfortable in that result. But if you're facing down Zacian and Thunderous, those are two physical attackers, so the special defense boost doesn't make any difference, at least on this turn. So it could have been a Precipice Blades, and if there was the Charizard waiting in the back that we did see in the first game, that would have probably been the preferred Pokemon you want to be going for a Dynamax if you have brought it to the game. So using up a turn of Dynamax here, not so effectively, you could have probably got away with Precipice Blades.
Yeah, I'll completely agree with that. And I think at this point, Gabriele once again has positioned himself to the point where he just goes for the Dynamax and just decides to focus on which Pokemon he wants to target and try to either A, pick up the KO, B, expect the Protect coming out from them, or C, just deal spread damage as well from one target to another. Because at the moment, his strategy is based off of momentum. He needs to try to get these reads correct. As so far, we have been seeing that the strategy has been very read-based.
And so it's going to be going on the offensive now with the Thunderous that is going to be going for that Dynamax. Try and get the Airstreams going between the Zacians, because we haven't seen the speed interactions yet between the two Zacians. No. Because the Zacian on Gabriele's side of the field got the speed boost initially on that in that game one. So now we'll see the interactions here. Which Zacian is going to move first? Because if Gabriele's is still just faster, it's going to be able to get out the damage even without the Airstream.
Oh, and we actually see Eric's being faster. It goes for the Behemoth Blade, and of course it will be targeting the Thunderous Incarnate, just shy from a 2-hit KO there, as we're going to be seeing the Zacian on Gabriele's side move immediately after. Goes for its own Behemoth Blade, now into the Groudon, so naturally taking advantage of the boost of base power when targeting Dynamax Pokemon, as we're going to be seeing Max Airstream doubles up into the Groudon, and ooh, it just survives on 30 hit points there, which will allow it some breathing space to actually go for the offensive and maybe even try to pick up a KO on this Thunderous, but no, it goes for the Max Quake into the Zacian, trying to prioritize it, and the Zacian survives on 11 hit points.
Yeah, you can see how crucial that Intimidate was on the opposing Groudon, and the Zacian able to survive that. And now it is going to be faster than the opposing Zacian as well, so you get to go for your Behemoth Blade pretty much uncontested at this point. You know, the Groudon's going to be Assault Vest, so you can just target and attack, whether that's from the Thunderous or the Zacian, into that slot and pick up the KO, and then the other Pokemon will be able to attack the Zacian and bring it in range of another attack in the future. So yeah, very, very nice survival of the opposing Zacian there. Didn't really matter too much that it undersped the Eric Zacian, because you could just get your Airstream faster, and the interactions with the Behemoth Blades didn't matter too much at that point. But now it is going to be a lot more impactful, because you are now outspeeding. You can just pick up the KO on the opposing Groudon and get some good damage into the opposing Zacian. You could choose to double up into the opposing Zacian as well if you wanted to try and pick up the KO that regard. Ooh. And the Zacian is attacking Eric Zacian, so that might be what we're seeing.
Yeah, might it even be indeed, as the Max Airstream does allow Gabriele's Zacian now to move faster, but it doesn't actually pick up the KO on its counterpart on the other side of the field. But guess what does the Max Airstream into the Groudon? So understandably, I think you made a note that it's likely to be that Assault Vest that that Eric, has been using on this Groudon. So no way to actually get a Max Guard off in that scenario. So at the moment, it seems like Eric is just going to be targeting down, see if he could pick up a KO. At least on this Thunderous, he has a chance to, due to that Life Orb recoil, as he does target into it, and he is successful in doing so.
Yeah, that could be pretty impactful here. If the Gastrodon's waiting in the back and the Kyogre is on the Pokemon in the back for Gabriele's side of it, which you would assume so, then it's going to be quite difficult to break through this Gastrodon now, because the Zacian on Gabriele's side is so low, it's going to be able to be taken care of by any attack that Eric would want to go for. So it could be a little bit of an awkward endgame for Gabriele. There is the Kyogre at least, so you have to be hoping that there is no Gastrodon, but it is an Incineroar to start off with. That's much, much better for the Kyogre.
Yeah, I mean, and you would have thought that maybe this adaptation would actually turn out to be quite good for Eric, but in this scenario, Kyoto is quite happy on being on the field, so for Eric's side, I think he'll be hoping that he actually does have that Gastrodon in the back and maybe trying to bait this Kyoto to allow it to get that Storm Drain boost as the Gastrodon switches in, but then you do still have to be wary of this Zacian and maybe try to focus and get rid of it, then you know at least that the Gastrodon can potentially 1v1 this Kyogre in the end game.
Yeah, you've got to assume the Gastrodon is waiting in the back, but it's just which slot would you switch it in? If you switch in for the Incineroar, that will keep it nice and healthy, but then you don't get a fake out that could even KO the Zacian at this point because it is so low. But yeah, that's the option that is going to be going for. The Incineroar just wants the Intimidate, not going to be going for the fake out, just trying to get that Storm Drain boost with that Gastrodon switch in.
Very nice indeed, as we're actually going to be seeing Gabriele Zacian go for the Protect in anticipation. And the actual second Zacian on Eric's side is going for a Protect as well. So just free Storm Drain boost right now for this Gastrodon, as it's going to be coming in. Complete stalemate from both sides, other than the fact that Gastrodon is now at +1 special attack.
Yeah, very nicely done by Eric. And now you've got the Incineroar waiting in the back. You could just switch it in again for the Zacian slot and get another Intimidate on the Zacian, because that's the main Pokemon that's going to be able to do damage to the opposing Gastrodon at this point. Assuming it has Play Rough. If it doesn't have Play Rough, then it's just going to be its fighting move coming out, and that still won't be enough. So the Gastrodon would just be able to fire off an Earth Power, KO the Zacian, and then easily take care of the Kyogre, because it does do so well with that Storm Drain boost, especially because it's got that +1 now. The Earth Powers would be doing significant damage to the Kyogre, so very nicely positioned by Eric there, bringing the Incineroar and then just switching it straight back out. You don't always have to be going for that fake out, even though it's so tempting to potentially get the fake out KO on the Zacian. It did protect itself, so making the correct play there, switching out into the Gastrodon, losing nothing from it at all, and now we do see that Incineroar switching in for the Zacian to get that Intimidate once again.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, getting your prioritization correct is something that's most key in this scenario, because Incineroar's Intimidate use there is so strong against the Gabriele Zacian, which is just waiting around and actually targeting into the Incineroar there. Completely ignores the Gastrodon, doesn't reveal Play Rough, as the Kyogre goes into the Gastrodon, hoping maybe to deal enough damage over time, but also pick up a freeze, which we didn't actually see occur there, but the Earth Power will just go ahead and pick up the third KO on Gabriele's side of the field, leaving this Kyogre all on its lonesome self.
And I don't think it would be able to do it. Even if it was just 1v1 against the Gastrodon here, it probably wouldn't be able to do it. You'd just be able to go for the Yawns, stall out a bit. The Earth Powers would be doing enough damage because of that Storm Drain boost, so there's not too much that the Kyogre can do. And even if it does take care of both of these Pokemon, you still got to contend with the Zacian that is waiting in the back that could just go for a Play Rough at any point. So very nicely positioned by Eric. Very interesting decision to go for that turn 1 Groudon Dynamax, and it did actually pay off for him. So I was able to take care of the Incineroar pretty comfortably, was able to survive through the Thundurus, and because something like the Rillaboom wasn't brought, the Thundurus was one of the main ways of breaking through the Gastrodon, but that was KO'd before the Gastrodon hit the field in this game. So then the counter would have been able to take care of the Gastrodon was just taken care of. So yeah, there's no way that this Kyogre is going to be able to beat those three. So Gabriele is going to forfeit this game, and we are going into a game 3.
Very solid comeback there from Eric, forcing this game 3 right now. So we saw the adaptation was to actually bring the Incineroar and see its utility in trying to slow down the damage coming out from the Zacian on Gabriele's side, because understandably the Thundurus was the early to mid-game prioritization from Eric's side. He wanted to make sure that he gets rid of that, allows the Incineroar to be a bit more freed up with its Intimidate spam and cycling per se, and then just try to win the end game with Gastrodon, which he just did so well there.
Yeah, you saw the Charizard did nothing in that game 1 for Eric, and the Incineroar, it came in and just came out again, and so that's all it needs to do. Just the Intimidate was good enough, so it could have gone for the fake outs as well to be able to help out, but Incineroar did make a lot more sense in that matchup than I think the Charizard did, especially if you are choosing to Dynamax the Groudon. If you're choosing to bring the Charizard, you most likely want to be going for the Dynamax, but going for the Dynamax with the Groudon means that Charizard probably wasn't the play there, and Incineroar did very well.
Yeah, and I think at this point, is there any sort of reason that Eric could even bring the Grimmsnarl here, or do we feel that it just doesn't have a spot on this Game 3 sort of like matchup that we're going to be going into?
Well, assuming it is the same variety of the Grimmsnarl that he brought to the European Internationals with the Iron Ball trick, That is very good into the opposing Thunderous. You would take care of the Life Orb, so it wouldn't be doing as much damage, and you would allow something like the Precipice Blades or the Max Quakes to be able to hit the Thunderous. So that could be an interesting adaptation going into this match. And even if you don't get the trick onto the Thunderous, Screens is going to be very useful. It would allow something like the Gastron to be able to survive the double off of the Max Airstream and the attack coming out from the Zacian, then you'd be able to get a Yawn off. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Grimstyle coming to the match. The 4 that Eric did bring into the game 2 did make a lot of sense, and you were able to take care of that Thunderous pretty comfortably and just win effectively with the Gastron waiting in the back. So maybe for Gabriele's side of the field, you do have to think about maybe do you bring that Rillaboom to the match, because if Thunderous is your main answer to the Gastron, but you aren't able to take care of it before the Thunderous has used up his Dynamax and been KO'd, then you don't really have anything in that endgame. So that might be an adaptation that Gabriele might consider as well.
Here's a hot take, Jamie. Do you think that Kyogre has a place in Game 3? I feel like maybe Rillaboom would have even done more in that scenario.
Potentially, yeah. Well, in that end game, the Rillaboom would have been pretty effective to be able to get the fake out, to be able to actually do damage to the opposing Gastron as well. So you do tend to want to opt into these Weather Wars, especially because Kyogre tends to get on the better end of it than the opposing Groudon. But Gastrodon is so pesky with that Storm Drain, you do have to reconsider that. And it seems like we're going in for the same lead with that game that we had in the game 2. We've got the Zacian and the Groudon coming out once again for Eric. We've got the Thunderous and Incineroar coming out once again for Gabriele.
I am really curious to say if it's all 4 Pokemon that Gabriele brought in Game 2 going into this Game 3. But of course we shall find out. We do see the same interactions occurring between Turn 1, at least pre-Turn 1 right now with Game 2. So do we think there's going to be any sort of change-up of move targeting right here? Because at some point I'd feel that Gabriele is kind of expected to go for the parting shot. He doesn't have a lot to lose, and he wants to ensure that the Zacian or any other Pokemon he brings in the back is safely brought in whilst there's damage mitigation already dealt onto Eric's 2 Pokemon in the lead.
Yeah, that seems to be the option that Gabriele opted for both games, and going into this tournament, you've got to have your game plan against Rinyasun, so that seems to be what Gabriele is going for. But now you've done that twice, do you do it a third time? Because that will lose, as we've seen, to the double up into the Incineroar with the Sacred Sword and the Precipice Blade, so we are going to be seeing a switch up, at least for Gabriele here, switching that Incineroar straight back out into the Kyogre.
Very interesting play. We're going to be seeing Kyogre's ability proc the Drizzle, which does revert the sunny day to a rainy day. As Eric is actually going to be going for the Dynamax here, it may just even be that Max Quake play into what was previously that Incineroar slot. But there is a potential of even seeing Max Rodfall here if he's anticipating the Thunderous, just wanting to just maybe go on the offensive, but naturally we haven't even seen the Dynamax proc, so the assumption is Protect, right?
Yeah, you would assume the Protect there is going to be coming out from the Thunderous, and yeah, we do see that all 3 games. Just going to be able to reposition here, try and get that Kyogre into position to use up the turn of the Dynamax.
As we're going to be seeing Zacian goes for the Sacred Sword into the Kyogre, does deal very good chip damage per se, let's say, as a Max Quake with the from the Groudon actually deals so much damage, brings the Kyogre down to 19 hit points whilst boosting both its own and Zacian's special defense there. So Gabriele, it feels to me that he may be even a worse position in comparison to where we were in Game 2 going into Turn 2.
Yeah, you lost an entire Pokemon in that Game 2, but you at least had a full health Kyogre waiting in the back, and you do want to be going for those Water Spouts if you can. And now that's no longer an option for the Kyogre. You still probably want to be Dynamaxing the Thunderous at this point, but that was two games in a row that the Thunderous didn't really do an effective Protect. It did a very effective Protect in that Game 1 with the Max Guard, but it needs to be going on the offensive in that first turn of both those games, because that was just a lot of lost damage potential, a potential Airstream that could come out from the opposing Thunderous, could have put the Kyogre faster than the Zacian and Groudon. You could have been able to get an Origin Pulse off before their attacks, but because the Speed Boost wasn't active on that Kyogre, it would just be KO'd, and that's probably why it's switching out into the Incineroar.
Alright, it makes a lot of sense. I guess the prioritization from Gabriele's side right now is to try to get Eric's Groudon Dynamax to essentially stall itself out whilst continuously dropping its attack as well as Zacian's right here, as we're going to be seeing the Thunderous Incarnate go for the Dynamax from Gabriele's side, of course. So even if we do actually see a Behemoth Blade and a Max Rodfall into this Thunderous, it's definitely not going to be picking up the KO by any critical hits, I imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be with it's -1 on the Zacian and -2 on the Groudon on this point. You can see there the Thunderous is taking that very comfortably indeed, and is going to be able to fire off one of its attacks here, the Max Airstream.
Max Airstream does come out, goes into the Zacian, so wants to make sure that that Zacian is put within a Behemoth Blade from Gabriele's own Zacian later in the mid-game. So I think it should just be enough within that range there. So we're going to be seeing the Groudon go for the max. Rockfall does target that Thundurus Incarnate, and like we said, Jamie, it's not enough to pick up the KO. The Thundurus is relatively healthy, obviously under half of its HP, but it's going to be able to utilize another max turn.
Yeah, and it's going to be able to fire off a very powerful Max Lightning, and based on the damage it did in that previous game, it'd be very close if it can pick up the KO on that Zacian, and you do have the Incineroar now that has Fake Out active if it wants to put a stop to the Zacian going for an attack this turn. If you want to just get an Airstream into the opposing Groudon, but it's still not really threatening down the Groudon too much. It's not doing any damage back really because of the 2 Intimidates, but you can't really damage it too much at this point. The main damage dealers would be the Kyogre and the Zacian that's waiting in the back, and the Kyogre is so low at this point that it's not going to be able to do too much damage unless it goes for the Origin Pulse, and the Zacian potentially could be doing a lot of damage, but out goes the Zacian for Eric's side of the field. In comes the Gastron, even without the Kyogre waiting in the back. Is switching in and not going to be taking an Airstream here.
Yeah, maybe anticipating that max guard and want to try to take advantage of momentum from Eric's own side of the field. As we're going to be seeing the parting shot actually moving first before the Groudon, thanks to that max Airstream, does target the Groudon. It's going to be able to bring it down to -3, if I'm not mistaken, Jamie, and actually bring that Zacian in on his own side of the field to threaten this Groudon, at least two-shot it, and maybe even target down this Gastrodon if need be.
Yeah, it could be doing that, but it's going to be targeting down the Thundurus at least, so that's another good max guard coming out from the Thundurus to stall out the last turn of that Dynamax for the Groudon. And now with its -3, maybe even Rock Slide won't be enough to pick up the KO on the Thundurus, so you'd have to go for something like an Ice Beam with the Gastrodon as well, but it's quite a nice reposition into the Zacian. You are facing down a full HP Gastrodon and full HP Groudon with the Zacian. It's going to be able to do a reasonable amount of damage to either of them, but it's still not going to be enough, and then it will have to take some of the ground moves that come out, whether that's going to be the Precipice Blades or the Earth Power. And because that Groudon made it through all 3 turns of its Dynamax unscathed completely, it can just switch out of the parting shot drops and the Intimidates to just reset its attack, and then it would just be able to preserve the Sun in the back, because the Kyogre is still waiting in the back as well. You want to still be able to opt into that Weather War to be able to overwrite it, and if it switches in and overwrites, then even the Origin Pulses that could come out from the Kyogre won't be doing too much damage as well. But no, it's just going to stay in here. It's just going to go on the offensive.
Stay in here and go on the offensive. I feel like there's going to be a prioritization targeting that Gastrodon there. As yeah, we're going to be seeing the max Airstream going into the target. I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Zacian tries to get rid of it. Actually, a critical hit there, so deals a bit more chip damage than what it would have originally, as it does increase the speeds here. So what does Zacian target down? It tries to go for the Gastrodon, and understandably does fail due to that Protect. So seeing Groudon actually coming out with a Fire Punch, maybe hoping to pick up a cheeky little burn if it can, but no burn and not a lot of damage dealt onto it. So a bit of a stalemate turn, but then again, I guess one more turn to actually get rid of this Thundurus' Dynamax.
Yeah, you used up the final turn of the Dynamax for just a tiny bit of chip on the Gastron, but that chip might not be insignificant on the Zacian. You usually need a little bit of chip to be able to put it in range of your own Behemoth Blade, and that chip might be enough. If you take care of the Incineroar, or if you get your Zacian in while the Incineroar is still on the field, you'll still be at that +1 and may be able to pick up the KO. We saw Eric's Zacian did move first without any Airstream boosts, but the Zacian now has an Airstream boost from the Thundurus, so it's going to be able to move first in that regard. But you've been able to stall out the turns of the Dynamax from the Thundurus. Gastrodon is still very healthy, so there isn't really too many good ways of breaking through this Gastrodon at this point, especially because we saw Sacred Sword go into the Gastrodon. Maybe that Zacian on Gabriele's side of the field isn't running play rough, and if it's not, there's not too much damage that could come out into this Gastrodon anymore. Fly would be a good choice, but you've got to wait a turn first.
And you do run the risk of the Gastrodon actually going for the Protect there as well, as it's very, very readable going into that following turn. As we're going to be seeing the Behemoth Blade goes into the Groudon, does ensure that 2-hit KO once more. Groudon actually decided to focus onto the Thundurus there, and as a result of the fly, does actually miss its targeting. Earth Power deals very good amount of damage onto that Zacian there, being able to essentially guarantee the KO in the following turn, but Zacian still is in a situation where it can protect if it tries and wants to.
Yeah, and so can the Gastrodon. That's one of the downsides of the fly. It's great for getting a max airstream, but having to take these 2 turns, you can always just protect on that second turn of the fly, because that is the best way of hitting this Gastrodon from the Thunderous now, and you just get to very safely protect, and there's no real downside to it. You could just go on the offensive with the Gastrodon. It's probably healthy enough to survive a fly and a Sacred Sword at this point, and then you'll be able to pick up double knockout with the Fire Punch and the Earth Power. But yeah, the Groudon finally going to switch out of those Intimidate drops and the Parting Shots. Now you're going to be able to preserve that Sun waiting in the back, and a full HP Incineroar intimidating the Zacian as well is going to be very useful.
What a lovely moment to actually reveal the Incineroar here, being that final 4th Pokemon that Eric actually brought. We see the Zacian going for the Protect. Further reason why that was such a good switch in an opportunity right there, as the Gastrodon is going to be going for the Protect. So Thunderous actually does not target the Gastrodon, so a bit of foresight coming up from Gabriele there, and because of the Defiant, actually deals so much damage onto this Incineroar. Definitely not what any of us were expecting there.
Yeah, not at all, and even though it was up in the sky, it still got that boost with the Defiant as well, and a perfect amount of HP coming out for Thunderous, allowing it to survive on that 1 HP. That means it gets 1 more attack potentially. It would have to protect itself from the Fake Out that could come out from the Incineroar. That was a very nice switch in. Catching the Zacian on the Protect and the Thunderous as it just drops from the sky, so you can choose your Fake Out target at this point. But the Gastrodon is still very healthy. You did want to be able to get a fly into it, but that was very good targeting for the Thunderous there to be able to get some good damage into the Incineroar. That's going to be in range of Sacred Sword or any of the attacks that the Kyogre will want to go for, waiting in the back, but it's still a very nice switch in for the Incineroar. You get to go for Fake Outs, you get to just go for Parting Shots as well if you want to reposition. Incineroar is going to be coming in for Gabriele side of the field, so they're going to be able to have Fake Out active next turn, but the Thunderous is still very low. It needs to protect itself if it wants to keep itself from the Fake Out.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing right now, Jamie, is the fact that this Gastrodon is running away with it. It needs to be focused and prioritized from Gabriele's side if he wants to have a chance to get this round 1 win versus the current European international champions. We're going to be seeing the Thunderous on Gabriele's side go for the Protect. We saw the switch out from Eric's side as well, and we're actually going to be seeing the Earth Power from the Gastrodon, proccing that Sugar Berry, not dealing much damage at all onto that Incineroar, whilst getting a bit of recovery due to the leftovers item on it.
It's basically back up to full at this point. You need to find a way to break through it. And there doesn't seem to be many options left for Gabriele. The Thunderous would only have 1 attack left in it. Even if you managed to land a fly into the Gastrodon at this point, it would still be doing very good damage with that Defiant boost, but it's going to be the best way of breaking through the Gastrodon. You've got to take that turn, you then just protect on it. So yeah, the Gastrodon is sitting very comfortably at this point. It just gets to fire off Earth Powers for the rest of the game if it wants to. The Thunderous is going to just take KO itself to the Life Orb, so if it gets that fly off, that is the final attack it gets to go for as well. The Groudon is going to be able to survive any attack that wants to come out from the Thunderous as well, because it also would have to take that first turn of fly to be able to get that damage into the opposing Groudon. You get to switch out the Incineroar for Gabriele's side of the field into that Kyogre. If the Groudon went for someone like a Rock Slide, that could be a double KO here.
It really could be. So I think Gabriele is really running out of resources very quickly with regards to the availability, of HP. Most of his Pokemon have definitely gone within the red to orange region. As good as we've seen, Precipice Blades coming out does connect onto the Kyogre, does of course pick up the KO, even though the rain has been set. The ground Pokemon has been left standing. So Gastrodon is able to go ahead and fully recover up to its max HP right now, and it's not looking particularly good for Gabriele right now.
Yeah, you've probably got to rely on something like a critical hit coming out from the Zacian at this point, and that's even if it has Play Rough. If it's still just Sacred Sword, maybe opting something like a Substitute as that third move, then even that probably wouldn't be enough to be able to pick up the knockout on this Gastrodon. You're going to use your last turn of the Thunderous as it's going to KO itself with the Fly, or it hits it maybe into the Protect of the Gastrodon, but then that's still not doing any damage at that point, and then you'll be able to pick up the KO with the Groudon. So it's still a very, very strong position for Eric. There just hasn't really been a proper way to break through that Gastrodon. The best way was Airstreams, and that's being used up at this point. So Gabriele is really, really going to struggle to break through this Gastrodon. The game has been going on for a reasonable amount of time. Maybe you do want to be trying to take a couple of knockouts and manage to stall it out that way. Maybe get into a 2v1 against the Gastrodon and eventually be able to win in that regards. But the Gastrodon is still going to be able to do good enough damage with the Earth Power. The Incineroar is probably in range of Earth Power. The Zacian definitely is, and the Thunderous is about to KO itself. So there doesn't seem to be too many ways back into the game for Gabriele at this point because of that Gastrodon.
the only way that I could actually see that Gastrodon getting completely knocked out of this game 3 would be that Fly accomplishing a critical hit, maybe with the Incineroar switching in for the Groudon perhaps to put it within enough range to pick up that one-hit KO thanks to the Life Orb, boosting its Fly further. But I feel like this Gastrodon has no reason to stay in, and that's exactly what we're seeing as the Incineroar is going to be coming out right now.
Yeah, if you switch in the Gastrodon, you don't actually care if you get hit by a Fly. Something's going to be KO'd, but that doesn't matter because that's not the Gastrodon. So you do get another Defiant boost in the sky, which is quite interesting to see. But here comes the Fly from the Gastrodon. It was targeting the Gastrodon. And Incineroar is just sacrificing itself basically here for that Life Orb tick to be able to KO the Thunderous. And now there isn't really going to be a way to break through the Gastrodon anymore.
No, I don't think there is, because even the Sugar Berry on the Incineroar is gone and it's been used up. The Zacian actually reveals Play Rough. Oh my lord. I felt like there were multiple times that we were expecting to see it, but it's only just been revealed, so it was enough, of course, to pick up the KO there. Maybe anticipating a switch on that slot to try to maximize damage output there, due to typing, of course. But we're just going to be seeing Eric bringing in his final 2 Pokemon as well, the Zacian and the Gastrodon. And if I'm not mistaken, we have actually seen Eric Zacian go first when not taking into consideration any max airstream or speed boost.
Yeah, so this is actually more of an interesting endgame than initially thought, because it does reveal the Play Rough. Something like a Play Rough critical hit could take care of the Gastrodon. So we have to see the speed interactions for both the Zacians here. The Zacian on Gabriele's side of the field, even with the Intimidate from the Incineroar, would still be in range of Behemoth Blade at this point. So maybe just seeing a double protect coming out from Eric's side of the field, it would be very safe in front of the fake out, because now you've seen that Play Rough is on that Zacian. You don't have to worry about it going for a substitute or anything on the fake out turns. So wouldn't be surprised if we see that. And then we'll have to see if Eric's was definitely faster than the opposing Zacian, or if it was a speed tie, because that could be crucial here. If the Zacian on Gabriele's side of the field is able to get off a Play Rough, that is the only opportunities that he would have to be able to break through this Gastrodon, because Gastrodon will always be the Incineroar in the end game, so you do need to be able to take care of the opposing Zacian. We are just getting the double protect to stall out the fake out turn, and then we'll go into the next turn to see if that Zacian on Gabriele's side of the field is able to get that Play Rough.
It makes a lot of sense. There's no reason not to go for the double protect there, because you're making sure that you could obviously nullify the fake out essentially, and then just go and focus down on what you can. And actually, I've just noticed Gabriele's your time is currently on 46 seconds, so really ticking time down there. Very close. We see 40 seconds there, and actually we see Gabriele go for the protect on the Zacian on his side of the field, maybe trying to utilize a focus into that target and utilize this Incineroar instead, going for the Flare Blitz. Maybe if he could pick up a burn crit KO somehow, I don't know, but we don't see either of those things. We do see damage recall, and actually the Gastrodon focuses onto the Incineroar with the Earth Power, leaving it at a measly 25 hit points.
Yeah, now you still have a way back into the game with Gabriele. If you get a double protect as the Zacian targets it, you could KO the opposing Zacian with a Flare Blitz at this point, then you would still need the critical hit from the Play Rough, because just a regular Play Rough should not be enough on the opposing Gastrodon, and Zacian is definitely in range. Both Pokemon are in range of Earth Power at this point, so Gastrodon gets to choose its choice of KO. So we'll have to see what's going to happen in this effectively deciding turn. If the Zacian gets a double protect, that could be a way back in, but you need to get that double protect and critical hit to be able to survive the turn, or just go on the offensive initially and just go not go for the double protect at all. The second tool went into the Incineroar instead.
Yeah, and we have seen Eric's Zacian go first once again. Play Rough, can this get a critical hit or not? It does. Oh my lord, it actually does.
Not enough anyway.
Not enough at all. We see the Gastrodon going ahead and finishing off this round 1 in favor of Eric Rios, running away with this set 2-1 versus Gabriele, whilst Gabriele only had 11 seconds remaining of your time.
Yeah, that was a very, very long game, and initially very explosive with the Dynamaxes coming out very early for both players, and then it was just a little bit of a slog to get through that end game, and that tends to be what Gastrodon can do. If you've taken care of what would be the counters to it, then it can just effectively sit on the field and do what it wants and just take a nice slow end game there. And it was a bit closer than initially thought, but the fact that the critical hit was not even enough on the Gastrodon meant that end game was incredibly safe for Eric.
Yeah, exactly that. And I feel it kind of goes to what we were saying. Maybe the Rillaboom could have been a bring there, because what really was the Kyogre doing there other than actually reducing Gabriele's own Incineroar's Flare Blitz damage output?
I think the only thing it did in that entire set was Water Spout once and give Gastrodon a boost.
Yes.
So that's exactly why the Gastrodon is on that Sun composition, to be able to effectively put a stop to whatever the Kyogre would want to do. That Rillaboom may have been necessary to break through that Gastrodon, because it was taking care of very, very comfortably in that game. One, the double up of the Zacian and the Max Airstream was able to take care of that Gastrodon, but the fact that you weren't able to get that Max Airstream off into Gastrodon in that game 2 or 3 meant that there was no real way of breaking through it. So maybe you didn't need to see that Rillaboom coming out for Gabriele's side of the field, because that would have just been able to take care of it in one shot. And you get to go for something like Grassy Glide, take care of the Gastron, and free up the Kyogre to go for its water moves that it wants to go for.
And you can even utilize it against Groudon as well, can't you? Because it's still hitting it super effectively, and you still have fake out pressure, maybe potential U-turn pivot as well. So you could have been going for double pivot, double fake out plays with the Incineroar and Rillaboom, but that's left to be said. Gabriele went ahead with the Kyogre instead, and essentially what we did see in that game 3, it was just being used as a damage sponge Pokemon, essentially. And maybe if it wasn't focused, at least the slot it was switching into, it could utilize itself with a Max Airstream, Water Spout, or Origin Pulse sort of strategy, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. Eric was able to go ahead and bring the comeback with 1-0 down, straight back up to 2-1.
Yeah, very nice. Bouncing back from such a dominant win for Gabriele in that game 1, showing the kind of player that Eric is, able to bounce back very comfortably and have a very strong showing in that game 2 and game 3. So a very great round 1 coming out for us for this Bilbao Special Event. We will be cutting to a break very shortly, and we will be coming back with round 2.